Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Today we're going to consider the country of Papua New Guinea, a Melanesian nation located north of Australia and east of Indonesia. Nearly all its population is Christian, with 27% Catholic. One of the great Catholic influences in the country still today is Blessed Peter ToRot, a lay catechist who through his own intense prayer life and daily communion ministered to his people of Rakunai village. He, along with other Catholic missionaries, was arrested in 1942 by the Japanese invaders during the Second World War. They were held in concentration camps, prevented by the Japanese from worshiping or teaching the faith for fear that they would pray for the Japanese defeat. The Japanese tried to force the population back to their pre-Christian ways, even enforcing polygamy. Those who resisted the law were punished. Finally, Peter was tortured and killed for his faith. To tell us more about the story of Blessed Peter ToRot, it is my great privilege to welcome Bishop Rochus Tatamai of the Bereina diocese, a great grandnephew of Blessed Peter ToRot. Welcome, Your Excellency, and thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you very much, and I'm also happy to be here.
Your Excellency, how was the influence of Blessed Peter ToRot on your life? How was it, if you will, growing up in the shadow of such a great historical figure?
It was not easy also in the beginning for me to know that I was actually part of the family. It came in only when I was really about to go to school, that when we were lining up as kids to enroll for the prep. And that was when the parish priest was asking about who I was, and the other children were trying to say, call my parents' names. And then he was insisting, is he a grandson of Peter ToRot? And they were actually saying, no, he's a grandson of Joseph Tatamai. And Joseph Tatamai is the elder brother of Peter ToRot. So that is how the connection came to the first time, like the parish priest was actually insisting that I must be a grandson of Peter ToRot.
How was that when you recognize this? How was this also in the family to live this legacy, if you will?
It was through like the devotional life that came through, because Mom used to walk with me through the cemetery, like going to the gardens or down to the shops. We would pass through the cemetery, and then we would stop at the graveyard. And there we would always see fresh flowers, and she was always, stop and pray. And then there was a custom that people used to come and, they collect the soil, and they would rub that and then take away to their homes and use it for the sick people, or even to just paint ourselves with the dust from the grave.
Your Excellency, Blessed Peter ToRot became a lay catechist at the age of 18. He took that decision. He didn't become a priest as his father didn't want him to, but he became a lay catechist. What did that mean at that time? Because, of course, we're talking about Papua New Guinea, a very young country, just before the Second World War, with a history of very tribal tradition. So it must have been quite a brave decision for this young man.
Yes, taking us into putting us in a perspective is that the father of Peter ToRot himself is a first Christian. He's a first Catholic.
He was the first Catholic in that area?
In that area.
In that area.
Yeah. So he was only baptized in 1896.
Okay.
And Peter ToRot himself, with my grandfather, Joseph Tatamai, they become the second generation. My dad is the third. I'm only the fourth generation.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So for this young church to already have a blessed in that in that history, short history, I think it's for me something that is very encouraging and really fresh.
He married at the age of 24, so he saw himself as a family. He lived as a family father as well, which almost makes his history more tragic, of course, for the family and his wife left behind. Can you give us just a little bit of insight into the character, the person of Peter ToRot, and especially the time during the Japanese invasion when he was called to his martyrdom?
Actually, when he came back from his catechist training, he was only a young man, and yet when they met with the catechist, the older catechist in the parish, they all voted him to be their leader. So they were having already confidence in him.
What was it that was so strong or so attractive about him?
I think he showed the leadership, the character that he was a leader, but also a man of deep faith, because at that time a catechist was expected to be a teacher also. So the teacher, he teaches at school, and also teaches subjects of whatever that they were teaching. But a big part of it was the catechism, learning hymns. And so he actually displayed that this deep respect, and they could see that there was growing up amongst them was a promising leader, and also inspirational in his own relationship with them as a community. And not only that, the other thing is that was also noted is he constantly returned back to the parish priest to consult and to discuss issues. So he wasn't like said, I'm finished from studies, now I just go and do whatever. He was always in that process of an ongoing formation, so to speak.
Yes. The Japanese invaded and took over the island of Papua New Guinea, what is today Papua New Guinea. And there was, of course, during the time of war, also great brutality and great suffering among the people. And particularly Christians were detained. Why was it that Christians, missionaries and catechists like Peter ToRot, why did they suffer so much at the hands of the invaders?
I think the first thing was the Japanese did was to remove the missionaries from the communities. And that is when the missionary, the parish priest at Rakunai, spoke directly to Peter ToRot. Now we are going to prison. Now you take responsibility, look after the community and show your faith, you be their leader. So in that sense, when the Japanese took these people away, they thought that there was going to be a disruption of the
collapse of the Christian community.
Yeah. But in fact, what Peter ToRot did immediately was reorganize what we call today the basic Christian communities. That was already the concept that he had to get them to organize, and he immediately walked around to encouraging them and praying with them. Even that time, because of the air raids, they already begin to dig their tunnels, so he has to visit them in their tunnels for the sessions of prayers. So this was the case. It was really like a disruption of the flow of the Christian life that was in the community.
Now, in prison, he was then later arrested for continuing the missionary activity, and I suppose the Japanese also saw his leadership and saw that as being a threat as well. He was arrested and then imprisoned, and he continued his ministry in prison.
Yes, I think the first events he was allowed to do what he was doing, but then gradually they began to really suspect that this was the prayers of these people were really leading to their defeat. And to some extent, it gives the sense that the Japanese have a sense of God also in their lives.
If not superstition, I mean, they were afraid of this community.
Yes. Yeah. So Peter ToRot was taken into Rabaul, the town. He was actually cautioned and also was whipped and told to go back and not to continue. But he in fact went back and he just continued. So there was 2 times he been called in and then cautioned. He came back. He just almost despised to continue. The question that he was always asking is obedience to God important or obedience to men? It's almost repeating what Peter himself was saying.
Yes. And then he was finally tortured and killed for his faith.
The actual tragedy came around when the Japanese authorities called in all the chiefs of the village and told them now they were given license to take second wives. And now the challenge for Peter ToRot was the chief of our village and my grandfather both took second wives. And by culture, he's supposed to respect them because he was only younger. But this is where his Christianity, Christian discipleship stood forward and said to my grandfather, it's not right. And if you want to continue to live with this woman, then he actually expelled my grandfather with that woman. And he actually got the family to stay with him. 2 weeks later, my granddad came back. And then that's when by the time he came back, Peter ToRot asked him to witness a marriage. And that's when this marriage was being reported to the Japanese. And then when they were both questioned, the Japanese came and raided their camps. And he told his 2 brothers when they were in camp, you two will be released. But I'm here for a different reason, so I will not be released. So somehow he knew.
He knew already.
He knew the price of what he was doing.
Because he was... Now, why did the Japanese enforce polygamy? They wanted the population to reject Christianity. Why did they so push on this question?
It was more a question of winning the local support.
Okay.
They wanted the local chiefs to be supporting the Japanese, to be supportive of them. So they gave them, and men as men, this was an opportunity. And this was like seeing to be favorable for them. But Peter ToRot stood his ground and was very clear. He said, this is not right. We will not obey the Japanese because we would like to respect Jesus and his teaching. That's what he said here.
Your Excellency, I want to talk a little bit now about the present situation in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is a very mountainous, very difficult geographical region, and evangelization has been difficult up until now, although it's, I think, a little bit easier today. How would you describe the faith of the Papuan people today in Papua New Guinea?
I think the faith the people received with enthusiasm, and they are living it. Till today, the churches are full with for liturgies. Young people are pretty active. Communities they look forward to these big feasts, and the celebration of the faith, the sacraments, is still very active and alive. I think my challenge really is to go deeper down, that to have a personal conviction.
So, if you will, the primary evangelization has been done. Now, why the personal conviction? Is it that Christianity is something cultural but not necessarily something lived in the heart? It
is because we are almost people who are good for big celebrations. We love celebrations. Now we need to go beyond the celebrations and really go to why I'm here for this celebration. And so I think the real, what we may call the real challenge for us is getting people to get to really know, why do we celebrate? What is the real essence of our celebration? And that encounter with Christ that we would like to really promote is gradually coming forward. You see some lay people are really already at that point. They are there daily for the Eucharist. They are there daily for the celebrations because something has happened inside, in a profound way. Yes.
Papua New Guinea has over 700 different cultural groups, different language groups, which also in itself is an extraordinary challenge for the Church, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But I want to come first of all to the question of traditional religions, because each tribal group has, of course, its traditional religions. Can you tell us a little bit about traditional faith in Papua New Guinea, and how would this manifest itself? What would be some examples that you could give us of traditional religion in Papua New Guinea?
From my experience, a traditional religion is more coming to know an acknowledgement of, an awareness of a presence that is there. I still feel this myself, because when I'm traveling on doing my patrols, you see an amazing piece of what you call nature, and it's so fascinating. It looks to you, and then immediately you sense that it has something beyond it itself there. So there's a sense of
something supernatural.
That's right. Yeah. So there is a sense of a presence here. And sometimes when we are actually walking around with people who are new to our places, when you are new, they would say to you, you are new here, so you better call your name, because there's a presence here. Our ancestors who are present always here would like to recognize you. Or sometimes the other who is leading may say, we have our friend with us here, is one of us. So there is a communication. Where is it going? But there is an awareness that there is a presence there somewhere.
Yes, yes. Did this facilitate evangelization, this sense of the supernatural in nature, and was there a sense already, if you will, of the Holy Spirit? Many missionaries say, for example, God was there before us, no? And did you also have this feeling as a Christian evangelizing that God is there before you, and now it's just the awakening of this knowledge within the hearts of the people?
I give you a practical example. I was in Ireland in 1997, 98, and I turned up in the church to actually celebrate the Mass as a priest, and I also thanked the Irish for sending the missionaries to coming to Papua New Guinea. And I made a comment that, when your relatives, missionaries, came to evangelize my people, they have an easy time, an easy task, because we were already aware of a spirit. I am trying to talk to you about God. I'm having a hard time.
Yes.
And I meant that secularism was beginning to be already very big and strong. So, I believe that the missionaries, if they were smart enough and discerning enough, they would sense where the people were. And one thing, the key to that was they learned the languages of the people. And when they learned the language of these people, there was a worldview that was open to them that they could see, because the words were actually the key to a new world altogether. And from there, they can work with what was inside. The disadvantage was our people never learned their language.
Oh, yes.
So they never returned back to see what the other world was
like. So they couldn't see their worldview.
Yes. So the missionaries actually had an advantage of seeing our world by learning our languages, which was something we also are thankful to, because they taught us our own grammar and also our languages. And they were experts in our languages. While we were only speaking our languages, they actually found a way to methodically teach it and analyze it.
Going back to this question of you touched on two things. One is secularization. I would like to talk about a little bit, but first you touched on the question now of the worldview. That is, the missionaries came and they were allowed to enter the worldview, but perhaps the Melanesian people were not enabled to see the missionaries' worldview as a consequence of this language, which has provoked, or perhaps my question to you, has this provoked the situation today where Papua New Guinea is caught between Stone Age and modernity. This extraordinary leap, if you will, that the people are called to live today, which must be terribly confusing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
This is the quantum leap in a Melanesian context. Europe, with all whatever it happens, you have an evolution of stages
of culture,
and whatever. For us, it's being there, simple, down to the earth, near to the earth, and then all of a sudden, overnight, catapult from there into today, modern age. So you are denied this particular transition period.
The whole transition.
And the evolution that takes place, because in it there was its own riches and its own experiences, disadvantages, learning experiences. We don't have that. You are confronted with, you have to cope with this now. This is it.
It's almost like having Stone Age in your backbone and modernity in your hands, which means that when you're confronted with a problem in modernity, you still react with the Stone Age in your backbone.
Look at a young lady working in an office today in one of the cities like Port Moresby, working with the latest computers and whatever, gets on a bus in the afternoon, goes back to the house, changes from her uniforms, get onto her dress goes down to the river, fetches the water, cuts the firewood, comes up and cook the food with her hands.
Yes.
This is and in the morning she will be back again, answering telephones and everything, and talking to the rest of the world.
It's almost schizophrenic.
Yes, it is, yes.
How do the young people react?
I think a lot of people were not prepared for it, because they have to be educated. But again, there's another challenge coming through here, because unfortunately the adult generation were not part of, this was not part of their growing up. So the young people who are actually being part of this whole thing of the modern lifestyle and technology, somehow they look at the adult generation with scorn to some extent. And the parents, sometimes they feel that they are powerless because they cannot switch on the television, they cannot play the computer games. They let And the kids come and say, Dad, I want this, I want this, I want this. So they have to buy it for them. And they just totally do not know.
It's a world, a separation between two different worlds.
It is so immense. It's a worlds apart, and yet it's one
culture,
instant.
one society.
Yes.
How do you work in this environment? What can the church do, particularly for the young people, to educate them so that they know the tools in their hands? They are not the tools in their hands are tools for them. They are not slaves to the tools in their hands.
Apparently, which is a sad thing, is to really for me to say that they're becoming because of there is no awareness in before, no preparation for all this. They're becoming slaves of this and always looking out for the latest gadgets to have, and sometimes unaffordable. And yet, when you look at it a positive way, from the remotest, there is no electricity in those places, and people can still contact you on the telephone. And you wonder how they are charging their mobile phones. They did to tell me, and I know people, they have to walk up to the hill, the highest mountain, to be able to get a signal to talk, or even climb trees to even talk. But they do not have the electricity there, so how do they charge their phones? They use other ways of using the batteries that they have, but they just invent on how to do these things, to try to live in two worlds, wanting to be part of the tradition, but also wanting to be part of what is modern.
Yes. And one further element of this question, of course, is the cultural values, or rather lack of cultural values, that comes with secularization. In our conversation today, all about values, the values of the Melanesian people, the Christian values, which helped in some ways, I think, guaranteeing and trying to keep these local values of the people. And now, through modernity, you have an imposed secularization. How do you see this in the young people? Are they losing their faith? Are they disoriented? What does secularization mean for the young Papuan people?
A lot of the young people today, they are actually caught up in all this, and they are grappling with which way to go or how to go. They're wanting to hold on to a past that they also like about their parents having it, but they also want to be part of the world that is here today. So the negotiation, sometimes they do not have the skills to negotiate this. They do not have the proper awareness, the proper education and formation to how to use these things. So a lot of them, they lose sight. And as I say, they're just like chasing the light without even having any roots on themselves. So they're getting lost to some, like there is a sense of wanting to copy. They prefer modern music. It's what they see on television, what they can download on internet. These things begin to be the values that they see as modern, and they despise to some extent what they used to have. And so it's because what they are receiving, and you have to be part of what is happening now. Yes. That seems to be the feeling of everyone.
I would like to talk a little bit now about the vocations, the questions of the growth of the Catholic Church in Papua New Guinea. Is secularization, for example, having an impact on the number of vocations, or are there still young men and young women willing to give their lives to God?
The question of vocations, at one stage I was seeing that they were all coming forward. Young men, young women were responding generously. Now it's beginning to be a real big question that you have to actually do more to promote vocations. I think a lot of them are beginning to be caught up. The young people today are getting caught up in all these questions where previously you have a permanent job. And now you can almost have it for a part-time. You can be on a very short term. So these are questions that really challenge religious commitment. If you have to be a priest, you have to be religious, it's a whole of your life. But what do they see there? Somebody is signing a new contract for 3 years, for 2 years. And then the availability is what they have, and they kind of market themselves in that sense. Now, that's actually challenging the question of vocations too for us.
Yes, I understand.
So it needs a lot of discernment and also a lot of conviction for the young men to show that this is a lifelong commitment. It's not only...
it's not a 3-year contract.
That's it, yes. And this is the kind of, the quick fix, fast food, fast lane, that is what is really getting people to get onto.
Your Excellency, if you were to try and put a finger on what would be your greatest need, what would be the greatest need that you would have?
My greatest wish for the people really to helping them to understand that they are important. Their dignity is important. They are precious. Whatever is happening around them, they have to be able to negotiate. They have been able to make decisions and make choices. But they have to remain always the final say, not allowing themselves to be run over by whatever is happening around them. And unfortunately, this seems to be the case at the moment, because being bombarded from all corners, people is like they don't know which wind or which tide you have to follow. You're halfway down there, then you realize you've missed the exit up here. Yeah. So that's where people are. So hopefully my biggest need is really that getting people to have more self-conscious of who they are.
Their dignity.
Yeah. And of course, their Christian vocation, and of course the dignity, like you're talking about them as an image and likeness of God, and how they relate with each other. I think those are the basic things that we need to recapture.
We need a few more Peter ToRots.
Yes, of course, Peter ToRot, we present to our people all the time that actually he died for the values of family life and the sacrament of marriage. And these are two basic things that are being challenged by modernism today, challenging the family and the sacrament of marriage. So being a lay person is ideal for all of us in terms of commitment. And you want to be standing firm to the end, giving your life for what you believe. And that's what Peter ToRot is all about. I also wish that he becomes a saint one day, so that the whole world can become, and that for me is what Papua New Guinea and Melanesia, Oceania, we can contribute to the church. The universal church is the contribution of the layperson to sanctity. That's, for us, our gift to the universal church.
Your Excellency, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you very much for having me with you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of the church in Papua New Guinea, or perhaps how you might be able to help, either through your prayers or your concrete action, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.